Hey guys, it's Miss Leone here, and today we're going to be drawing objects from basic forms. The two basic forms that we're going to be specifically drawing from are spheres and cubes. And within the cubes, we're going to be drawing front-facing one-point perspective cubes and two-point perspective cubes, which is if you turned it around and saw it at an angle. So the supplies we're going to need are a piece of paper and a pencil, well sharpened, and I'm going to have my little eraser here on the side. Alright, so let's begin. So the first step we're going to be drawing 3 different types of spheres, making unique objects from them. So when we're drawing spheres, we have to start with a circle. Okay, so when you're drawing a circle, you're going to be lightly, kind of like a ghost sketch, very light until you get the shape you're looking for. Okay, so we're also drawing lightly because if we make any mistakes, we can fix them. Okay, so we have it very, very lightly here. And once you see that you are happy with your shape, you can go ahead and slightly darken it. Not too much. I'm drawing a little darker than you should be drawing, just so you can see it clearly, but you should be drawing very lightly. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and do 3 spheres here, get them over with very lightly. Notice how I'm kind of like, I like to call it ghost sketching, because that's literally how light it should be. Very faint, very light sketching. It's okay if you have some extra little lines, thus the sketching. And then at the end you can solidify and get rid of any extra marks that you don't want. Okay. Alright, there we go. I'm going to draw one more, and it's okay if they're, not perfect, to the best of your ability. Okay. As long as they're not touching, they don't have to be equally distanced. You're just eyeing it at this point. And spheres are my least favorite form to draw, just because drawing circles perfectly is a challenge. And unless you're tracing, it's not going to be perfect. But at this point, it's not about perfection, it's about mastering a skill, so we don't want to trace for this. Because I'd rather just see you try and get better and improve. Alright, so we started off, we have our 3 circles here that are going to become spheres. Alright, so let's begin. So the first form, we're going to be starting by making an ellipse, which is an oval, right along the top, as such. Then we're going to be making a ring around it, following the shape of the form. So I like to start on both sides, okay? As such. It's okay if it's a little sketchy at first, because we are going to be fixing it once we're done. Okay, so I have a little extra there. I'm just going to go in and just kind of erase the little extra marks I made. So again, this is the beauty of doing this ghost type sketching, because we can fix it. Okay, next we're going to be doing another ring, following. I like to start on the 2 sides to kind of make sure that they're evenly spaced from each other, but they still need to curve. So again, lightly sketching, guys. Alright, so we have now 1, 2, 3. Alright, so now at this point, we're going to start to make an edge here. Okay, so we have this edge, we have this edge. Now we're going to be making a space here. So I'm going to be curving on each side, right here, and then we're going to be erasing a little bit soon. So I'm curving, figuring out how low I want it to go. And if you look in the assignment, you'll see the example of what this final product is going to look like. You should look at it before you start doing this. That way you have an idea of what's happening here. But the idea is that this is going to start to become a separate kind of floating shape. So you can go in with your eraser, or in this case I'm going to use my pencil eraser. I feel like it's smaller. I have more control. And you can see here that it's going to start to separate. Okay? Then from there I'm going to have another edge. Okay, coming across. Gently sketching. As even as you can. Okay. Make sure that this edge appears to be coming out of there. And then finally we have one more curve down here, just like we did up here. We're curving on both sides, curving, curving. Okay, there we go. And then we're just going to erase that little edge that we made. So mine is very sketchy right now. Once I start shading, it will become more solid. So this assignment has two parts. I'm demonstrating part one right now, okay? So let me just write this. So actually we forgot to label it, so this is just called Drawing Objects from Basic Forms. Just so we know what's going on here. And this is part one. So if you were in class when I did this, we did do it with the paper turned the other way. That's okay. This is easier for me to demonstrate. So now I'm noticing that this looks a little crooked, so I'm just going to go ahead now looking at it and just start to adjust where I need to. Okay, so we're going to start adding shading. So I'm going to be using the side of my pencil and getting in here. So when you're using shading with the side of the pencil, this is called gradation shading. Your lines start to disappear and the shading actually becomes the edge. So that's the great part about this. Alright, so we want to make sure that the edges become crisp. Make sure there's nothing under your paper, no crumbs. If you see that you've gotten into one of the other areas, just erase. So at this point I'm just going to very lightly use the point of my pencil just to kind of very lightly, though I'm not making lines here, I'm just very lightly shading it in. Okay, next this is going to stay white. This next area right here, this is going to get shading. Very lightly. Try to keep it in the same direction. I'm just going to tilt my paper a little because it's a little awkward for me to draw with the paper facing that way, but for demonstrative purposes, that's why I'm doing it. Okay, and then from there, I'm just going to go ahead and crisp my lines. Make sure my edges are solid looking. And again, remember when you're shading, the shading ends up becoming the edge. Those lines disappear. It shouldn't look outlined like a cartoon. Okay, and then we're going to make sure that we're erasing any places that we went over, cleaning it up. Okay, I'm just going to crisp up this little corner. Okay, and then finally, the last part that's going to get shading is right above here. So I want to try to shade with the form to the best of my ability here. Again, I have to tilt my paper just to get this little angle. It's a little pain in the butt over here. Okay. Just to get that little corner. So at this point, I'm just going to look at it and see, is there any place that it can be straighter? Is there any little edge that can be crisper? Is there anything that I can erase? Maybe this little edge can be just a slight, tiny bit crisper. Okay. Maybe I'll add a little darker shadow under this edge, kind of give it an illusion of maybe more three-dimension by one little part being a little darker. Same thing here. Just by pressing down harder with the pencil, applying more pressure, it's going to give it an appearance of having a darker value. Same thing up here. Alright, and that's it for the first one. So now that we've done that, let's move on, but after one more thing, I'm just gonna crisp up. I'm not pressing too hard. I just really want to crisp some of these edges since we sketched so light in the beginning. Now that we're done, just want to solidify them a little drop. Okay, and there we go. We just want to make sure that this is like coming out of there. Alright, so the next one we're going to be doing here, we're going to be doing vertical but curving lines, separating it. So it's kind of going to look like an eyeball, so to the best of your ability, and I'm sketching lightly in case I have to adjust anything. I'm curving this way. Notice how I'm just lightly sketching, bringing my line down. Okay, so I have that. It looks like kind of like an eyeball. Then I'm going to make some more stripes here. So I have, let's see, so I have 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to put one more in this little corner. Alright, and now the other side, it's going to mirror that, so I'm going to put the same amount of curving lines, but opposite. So just be careful, make sure it's curving, that it's not vertical. Make sure it's following the same angle of the line before it to the best of your ability. Okay, I need 2 more lines here. Kind of looks like a pumpkin almost, but not quite. Or like a beach ball that has like a lot of extra stripes. Okay, so once we've done that, then we're going to start to add a few skinnier lines in there to give this little design. So this is really good practice on controlling the pencil and being able to make lines that match each other. Being consistent. Okay, so I'm going to go in and I'm just going to make these little hatch marks because this is going to make it look like it's carved out a little bit, like a slice. Okay, we're going to do that there. Then we're going to be skipping to the second line away, and I'm going to be making another line here and making that same little design. Okay, and then I'm going to try to do that over here, squeeze it in there as best as you can. It's really, really tiny at this point. And we're just going to do that on the other side, skipping the first line. Okay, making this line here. So again, this is really good practice on making lines follow the line before, parallel to each other, even though it's curving, but it's still parallel. Parallel meaning equally spaced, distance, and following the same direction. And I'm going to add one more over here, really thin. So your pencil's got to be really sharp. If you're having a hard time doing this and your lines are too thick, just go sharpen your pencil and try again. Okay, so now that we finished that, we just have to, the final step is to just shade in. So we're going to be making the center black and then every other one to the best of our ability. So I'm going to be using the side of my pencil to the main shading. It's going to be hard to get to the edge. Okay, maybe I'm going to just kind of turn my paper here to control, because if the point is below what you're drawing, this just helps you to have more control. You can see it's crisper that way. Okay, let me go back this way and just do the other side. And then I can just very gently, with the point of my pencil, just get in those little corners. Okay, we've done that. We're going to skip one, so this is white. This one's going to be that dark color, value, excuse me. To the best of your ability, get as close as you can. You might not be able to get right up into it on one side. We'll turn the paper again for that side. Okay, and then I'm just going to go ahead, skip one, and then this one's going to be dark, and then when I turn it around, I'll do the edge. As close as you can. Then I'm going to turn it around and get on this edge, as so. Using pressure, but having control. We're using the side of the pencil. Alright, so then I can go in and simply just erase, just to clean up any edges that kind of went over. And then I'm going to go down here, just with the point, just to kind of crisp up whatever tiny areas I had a hard time getting in. Alright, so we're halfway done with the shading now. You just want to really crisp up those little tiny areas. Alright, so now just repeat the same thing on this side. So the side of the pencil makes it so much easier to shade in larger areas. And then this just has like a thin, so this is a little trickier because it's very thin here. Okay, now I'm going to turn around my paper just to get the other edge, crisp it up. So when you're doing edges with this technique, I like to go underneath. See the direct, how my pencil point is right under where I'm trying to shade, just to make it nice and crisp. And then I can go in with the point gently though. We don't want to see lines, we just want it to be very gently, just to get those little edges. Alright, and that's that. That's the second one. Let's move on. Now the third one, we're going to be making this interesting little like windows, kind of has like a futuristic vibe here. Alright, so we're going to be starting off here by making this little kind of half a circle at the top. Okay, then we're going to be making an oval in the center here. Now I'm going to making like a diagonal kind of window opening, kind of squared but curving. So I'm starting with this diagonal line, making a curving shape following the shape of my sphere on the outside, having another curve slightly lower, and then connecting it this way. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side but just slightly lower. It's going to be the opposite of what I just did over there. Again, curving down and curving this way, and then coming across. Okay, there we go. So now I'm going to start to make it look three-dimensional. So to do that, I'm going to be adding a little line here. Okay, as such, I'm going to be adding a smaller oval inside of there. I'm going to be making edges here, so I'm going to put a line right there and a line right there. See how they're diagonal but kind of facing towards each other. And then from there I'm going to match, so this is parallel, I'm matching it, that means it's the same angle. This is also parallel, right? It's the same angle as the curve. So parallel is a very important word for this assignment. Things have to be opposite and matching. Same thing here, I'm going to put my little lines coming across, down, parallel, down. So we're starting to get a sense of more three-dimension here. So it's this little like futuristic shape. So now at this point, I'm just going to be making some hatching. So this one makes me laugh. It kind of looks like an upside down, like an empanada or pastelito, like a patty, like a meat patty. Okay, so here we're just making this texture so it looks like, almost like if you carved a pumpkin, and these were like the little windows. It gives it dimension. Little hatching marks, hatching one direction, not cross hatching. And then here I'm just going to be making some marks radiating out from the center. Alright, so we're almost done with this third one. So the final step here is we're going to be shading in the inner shapes. So here I'm just using the point of my pencil really gently. You can notice it's very smooth. Okay. This bigger area, I'm just going to start filling in the centers. I am going to use gradation here because it's a wider area. So the side of the pencil enables you to fill in larger areas quickly. So you're not like there forever. Trying to get my edges crisp as I can get them. Okay, same thing here. Let me shift. So I'm over here, you don't see me, but I'm shifting my body weight around so I can angle myself. And then in here, this is the final one. So now you can see it has dimension. So by making lines, and all of them that follow the shape of the curve, right, the shape of the form of the sphere, curving, being parallel, repeating, gives it more sense of three-dimension. Then you can just go in with your point and just kind of just crisp up any edges that need to be crisped. And then I'm just going to go and just kind of sharpen, define my outer sphere, my circle shape that I made here. Just very gently, not pressing too hard, just kind of tracing over what I have there, trying to be as neat as possible. Okay, so sometimes it helps to turn your page for sure. Alright, so that's that. So we have our three spheres. So the idea here is that they are, again, equally spaced, adding shading, controlling, parallel, and repeating. Okay, so that is the first section of part 1. Alright, so now we're going to move on to drawing some objects from cubes. So we're going to be starting with our front-facing cube first, and we're going to be using the shortcut technique. Okay, so that was from assignment 2. If you're confused on how to do that, make sure you go check that out. Alright, so let's continue. So I'm going to be leaving a little space because we do need to have the top of the cube here. So I'm going to be first starting with a square. So again, just drawing gently. And we want to make sure we're starting with a vertical line. So you're sketching lightly so that way you can make any adjustments. So right there, I got a little crooked. That's okay. Okay, I'm just going to straighten that line up. Okay, and then I'm going to be closing it off. I want to make sure it's starting as a square, so I'm going across, and I'm just going to erase this little extra because that line was just a little too long for me, for my liking. Anything extra we're going to be erasing. Okay, so we're keeping it light because we are going to be erasing some of the parts to make the form that we're looking for. So then the next step to completing this form is we're going to be making a diagonal line. Okay, right there. So now when we make our next diagonal line, it should be parallel, meaning it should be at the same angle. So if I take my pencil here and slide it across, I know that it should be at that angle, being evenly spaced and at the same, going the same direction. So sketching lightly in case you have to adjust anything. And what you're going to notice is sometimes it might look good at first, it looks accurate, but then later on you might have to fix any angles, so that might happen to me. And this one is also going to be parallel. So all these three angles are going to be parallel. So you can just double check that angle, check that angle, check that angle, and looking at it, it's a little off just by me doing that with my pencil. Okay, so now from there, I'm just going to be making a vertical line to connect it and a horizontal line across. And if you have extra, it's okay, you're just going to be erasing that. And now that I'm looking here, it's a little crooked. So I'm just going to be making it more vertical, which is fine. The eraser is your friend in art. And look how off. It was very slight, but those slight adjustments really make a difference in accuracy. So then I'm going to go in and just erase that extra. Oh, I kind of erased a little of the line I drew, so I'm just going to add it back in. Okay. So while I'm at it, I'm just going to go ahead and draw the next two cubes, so that way we can just add the details to it. I'm going to leave some space for the top. So we're doing 3 of these. I'm going to try to more or less keep it the same size to the best of my ability. And again, sometimes at first you might not notice if your lines are a little slanted, but you can always adjust it later on. Okay, so see right here I had a little extra, so I am drawing lightly, and then I'm just going to be darkening it once I finish, because we are going to be erasing a lot. Same thing here, I'm going to make my diagonal line, making sure that this is parallel, going at the same angles. Make sure this bottom one isn't horizontal, I see that mistake a lot. Okay. Extending that, vertical, make sure it's straight. Remember the one above, mine was a little slanted. If this ends up that way, I can just fix it same way as I did above. Okay, I'm going to go in, just erase any extra lines that I made here. I got little sketchy lines there. Adjusting. And then I'm going to, right there, and then I'm going to make one more underneath, so that way we're set up and we can just start drawing details. One more cube. It's okay if they're slightly different sizes from each other. We're not copy machines. So one might be a little smaller than the other. It's okay. Okay, here we go. Now here, this is slanted on me, so I'm going to fix that. Making it a little more horizontal. There we go. And then I'm just going to erase whatever extra I need to. I have a little extra up here. And you're going to notice that once we adjust, you might need to fix your angles, which I did right there as well. Okay, so now I'm going to be just making my diagonal, 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 vertical. So they are very light, and we're going to be darkening them after, once we do the details. So here I need to go across. So I'm noticing this was not as long. I just have to extend that line, erase any extra marks. Alright, so now we're set up for our cubes. So let's do this. Now the first step, right, for this, we're going to be making it look like this is split in half and floating on top of each other almost with a space. So we're just simply going to take, being parallel to the horizontal line, we're going to be splitting this up. So I'm making a horizontal line here and another horizontal line here. Okay. And then I'm just going to match it on this side. And they are going to be parallel to the diagonal lines above and below. And this is at this point, if anything is crooked, you're going to notice that your shapes don't look even, how you split them up. Okay, So once we do that, now we're going to erase a little bit. So I'm going to be erasing the vertical line in between the two sections that I've created. All right, there we go. So now we're almost done. It looks like they're floating on top, but it's missing the top of this lower form. So we are going to be, this back is just going to be a horizontal line because it has to be parallel to that. And then this corner, we're going to be making it parallel with that angle. So again, sketch lightly until you know that it's accurate. Okay, and then at this point we can just kind of go in and darken some of our lines. If they're too light. Okay, here, I'm going to darken this a little. Okay, here I ended up with like a double line. I'm just going to erase that, clean it up a little bit. So now the final step is we're going to be adding shading. So we're using the side of the pencil again. And we're just going to be adding shading to the top of this lower form, getting as close as we can to the edges. And again, noticing how where the shading touches the line disappears. That's very important when we're shading. The shading becomes the edge. Alright, so here I'm just going to turn my page a little just so I can have more control over this edge, because I do want to make it like crisp and sharp. So the idea is it should be crisp and sharp. We don't want it to be blurry. If it's not crisp, it becomes blurry. So if yours becomes blurry, all you have to do is just kind of clean up any edges. Okay, and then here I feel like I can crisp this little spot right here just a little more. And that's it for that form. That's what it should look like. It looks like they're floating again above, like this one's hovering. Okay, so now the next form we're going to draw is kind of going to be like a cutouts here, so it's hard to explain the exact form of it, but I'll just demonstrate. All right, so we're gonna start with this edge here, this side that's at an angle, and I'm gonna start by making almost like a C shape. So I'm gonna be tracing out, that's diagonal, but parallel to the one above it. This is vertical, parallel to the one next to it. So I'm gonna try to keep it like the same and the same size. Okay, so now that I'm noticing this, I see that that could be a little straighter. So I'm just making that adjustment here and just erasing anything extra. So we're going to start with that. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to be erasing this extra little edge. Okay, so at this point I can kind of darken here. Okay, so next, let's darken this because we're done there. Now, I'm going to just make a little edge in here, so I'm going to go horizontal from this little corner, just a little bit, but make sure it's horizontal, right? It's parallel with these three lines, and then I'm just going to make this one at an angle, so you can see it makes like a little, like a cutout, and then I'm just going to shade this in, just so we have a sense of dimension as we're moving along. Okay. So that's the first side. The next side, I'm going to be drawing a frame inside of this square. So all I'm doing is drawing a smaller square inside the square I already have. And I'm going to make it even on all sides. So it's just like a frame. And I'm shifting my body weight just to kind of be able to draw these different angles. Alright, so we're going to leave that alone for now. We're going to do the same thing on the top, but now it's going to be at an angle. I'm going to try to make it like the same thickness on the edges. Going across, horizontally, back down. So notice how all these edges are parallel to the lines that are next to them. Alright, so now that we have that done, now we're going to start to make this more three-dimensional. I'm just going to make these lines around it a little more darker, just a gentle, just to kind of define them a little more. So now what we're going to do here is we're going to be adding a little vertical line, kind of like what we did in here. So we're building upon this, except it's not curving. So I'm adding a little vertical line there, and then I'm going to be simply making a diagonal line that is parallel to that, and a horizontal line that's parallel to the top. So now it looks like you can almost like jump through, right? Like you can kind of get in there. This is becoming more three-dimensional. All right, so the next step is we're going to be opening this up like a little window. So I'm going to be making a diagonal line that's parallel. So now looking at that, I made it without looking at these. So I just want to make sure that it is indeed parallel to this, this, and this. There we go. So make sure you're looking, and if you do what I just did, fix it. And then from here, I'm just going to be making, so I'm starting there and I'm going up with my vertical line, just so it's in the right position from that edge. And actually I feel like this is a little too high there, so I'm just going to lower this a little drop. There we go. Just to lower it. We don't want to be too fat either, so we got to try to find a balance here. Okay, so now we have our edge. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of define my edges here a little more. Over here, across. Alright, so now the final step here is we need to make the inside, because now this is cut out. So the idea would be, see this corner here? I'm going to do it very faint, but the idea is that this line, this is the back of it, is coming across, and I'm just going to be erasing, and then from this corner here coming down, this is where they're going to join. So once I have that, then I can make it more solid here and here, and then over here I'm going to make a diagonal being parallel, and then just erase this little extra stuff I have going on here. Okay. And then from there I can just start lightly shading the inside, just so it has a sense of that this is inside. So I'm going to be shading that using gradation, nice and smooth, because it's a large area, it just makes it much easier. I'm going to turn my page a little so I can get that little in there, that little edge, and then up here. Just to define it. Okay, and then if we want to, we can kind of just shade inside of here, just to give it a little dimension, very gently, without losing it. At this point, we still want to see our lines in there, just to kind of, so we can really see these angles. Okay. All right, so that's that. So now the final front-facing cube that we're going to be creating is kind of going to look like a little puzzle piece, almost like a little, reminds me of almost like a Minecraft or something. Alright, so here we're going to be starting with the front of it, and I'm keeping it light for now because we are going to be doing some erasing. So I'm making a rectangle here, vertical, horizontal, make it a little lower, a little horizontal here. Okay, now from below, right below this vertical line, I'm going to make almost like a little opening. I'm going to make a little square here. So you can see now I have a rectangle and like a square, and then in this corner I'm going to make another square in this upper corner. So we see that it kind of goes up, across, it's fat, and then it's fatter here as a little square. Then all I'm going to do to finish the design is I'm making sure that from the lines that I drew, just following along like we did in the first one, but this just has more. Right there, and then here as well. Just making sure that it's parallel. So at any point you see that it's not parallel, like this one, see how it's slightly wider than there, so I'm going to adjust that while I have the chance. And the same thing here, and then I'm just going to erase any little extra marks. So now it looks like that. The next step is we're going to just start erasing this extra stuff. And be mindful when you're drawing that you're not smudging. So I see little smudge marks. It has to do with my hands. See a little lead here. So once we have that, then we're going to go in and erase wherever this little C-shaped opening met. I'm going to just fix that. If you erase anything as you go along that you weren't supposed to, feel free to add it back in right away. I have like a little double line happening here, so I'm going to clean that up a little bit. Okay. And then I'm going to clean that up. I'm leaving that for now. I'm going to concentrate on making my edges right here. So now to make this little edge, see this diagonal here? We're going to make a little edge in there that is parallel to that. And then we're just going to make a little, it's ever so slightly, it's just like this little tiny, kind of like a C shape within, just to get that angle, and I'm just going to shade it so you can see it right away. Okay, so it's going to start to be more three-dimensional. Same thing here, the same angle that I use there or there, right? I'm going to make a little line there, curve it up, and shade it in. And the same thing in here, but this doesn't have an angle, it's just going to be like a crescent moon shape. Kind of like that. And then just shade it in. Alright, so we're not going to worry about this one yet. Okay, we have to finish the top part before we can start erasing that. So just like what we did here, we're making that frame inside. Trying to keep it parallel to the lines on the outside of it. Sketch lightly, you can always fix it. Okay, since I'm done down here, I'm just going to kind of crisp up some of these other lines because I'm done with erasing on these particular sides. Okay, so now once we have that, now we can go ahead and, let me just fix this. I feel like I have a little double extra line happening. Let me go in there and just erase, clean it up a little bit better than I did before when I first drew it. So the eraser, again guys, is your friend. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is, from this point, this little angle in here, I'm just going to make a vertical line right there. So now you can see it has more like 3-dimension. Okay? And then I'm going to go in and right here, so I'm looking at this angle in particular, where that curve is going to have that angle in both spots. And then we're going to go ahead and erase that line there. So I erased a little of my vertical line back there. I'm just going to kind of add it back in. Okay? And then from here and this little point, let me just solidify this little edge. Okay, I'm going to just kind of curve from this edge and curve kind of like I did in the circle and in these, but the opposite way. So like a crescent kind of shape. And then just shade that in. So we're almost done here. So you can see how here we have that little curving shape. And now the final one is we're going to make one more curve on this little back wall. Kind of looks like cheese. It can be a little smaller. So we have that. And then we're going back to this diagonal, making it on both sides. Okay. Then just erasing. So it's like empty, just like on the other ones, and just curving in this direction, and then we shade it in. So now we have a sense of 3 dimensions. So like I said, it kind of has like a block of cheese kind of vibe happening here. Okay, now let's move on to the final one. So the final one, it's going to look like this, but it's going to be like if we took this and turned it to a diagonal. Okay, so we're going to start with just drawing this front face, right, this shape, but here. So notice how here, 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 right here, and here, everything is horizontal. In this case, it's going to be diagonal and parallel with these angles, okay? So the vertical staying vertical, so I'm going to start by drawing this vertical line here, okay? Maybe a little lower. Now here, I'm not going horizontal like I did here. I'm going at an angle parallel with my top and bottom line. Make sure it's parallel. If it's not, fix it. Then below it, directly below it, I'm going to make my little opening. So make it about that tall. And then I'm going to diagonally, horizontal with this bottom line, add a diagonal. And then one more vertical right there. So we're almost done. We just have to make this last edge. So here I'm going to draw a vertical line, making it higher than this side. And then now this diagonal again is parallel there. Okay, so you can see how it is the same shape, but it's just turned, so the angle's changed. And then here I'm going to finish it off. So that is diagonally parallel in the opposite way. I'm going to do the same thing on the top here and here. Okay, so then from there, it should look like that. So at this point, now I can go ahead and start erasing these extras. And this back extra. So now it looks like this, but we want to make it a little thinner. It's a little on the fat side. So what I'm going to do here at this point is make it smaller. So I'm going to add a diagonal line here and a vertical line here going all the way down. Okay, so I'm looking, I think it's a little off. So let me see how I want to break this up. Let me fix this a little. So this is my edge. I'm kind of losing my edges here. Let me fix this. I'm adding this edge just so I can see a little better. So yeah, I'm going to make it here. Just added that edge back. Just for now, I'll re-erase. That way I have a better sense of what I'm doing here. Here, and then I'm going to go in and erase this line again. So you can see it's more like a block. Okay, and then I can go in. So I have this, all right. Erasing what I don't need, which is also this line here and this line here. So if you're going to make adjustments, sometimes you have to add the lines that you erased to kind of make it clearer for you. Okay, so now from here, I'm going to go in and using this angle down here, I'm adding one here and here. Okay. And now from here, I'm going to be adding a diagonal line here. I'm adding my parallel line here. And then I should have stuck with the first one. And then I'm just going to make a vertical line going straight down. And you can see I'm just going to erase any little extra stuff.